Who doesn't like saving plants? Not only are you rescuing the plant from potentially being disposed of, but you're likely getting it for a bargain price. So you've seen a plant on clearance, but how do you know if it can actually be saved, or will it be a waste of money? Some plants may unfortunately be too far gone to rescue, but others may look a little bit worse for wear, or possibly even dead, but can still come back with the right care. So I'm going to run through the checks that I make whenever I see a plant on clearance that takes my interest, and how I decide whether or not the plant has potential, or even if I've got the necessary skills to rescue that plant. So I'll run through those, then hopefully you'll be able to use those same tips to do the same, rescue more plants and add to your plant collection without breaking the bank. So the main thing is to assess why it looks a little bit sad, why doesn't it look its best, and is that something that you are able to fix. So let's run through the checks and see if we can identify what's wrong and fix them. Now, as I said, it's often down to how the plant looks as to why it's on the clearance section. So the first thing we'll look at is damage, and this is a really quick one, depending on where the damage is, that can help you decide if it's salvageable or not. So we need to decide if it's physical damage, pest damage, or disease damage. I'll touch on those latter 2 points in other checks later in the video, but we're going to look at physical damage first of all. So we need to decide or establish where that physical damage is. Is it on the leaves? Is it on side stems? Is it on the main stem? So if you've got damage on the leaves or the side stems, most plants can come back from that. It might look a little bit untidy. If the damage is on the main stem or the base of the plant, you might want to consider the extent of the damage and do you think it can come back. If the plant grows from bulbs, corms, rhizomes, or where the main growth comes from something in the soil, it might still be salvageable even if the main stem is damaged. So another point which I'll cover later on too, and I've covered in some recent videos. So using this one that I've got as an example, this one is the Chlorophytum orchidastrum. This has got wonderful orange stems and green leaves, and it came with the matching pot for the reduced price. But as you can see there, it's got some physical damage where leaves have been snapped or ripped off. I'm not too concerned about that, as I've said, the main stems all look fine, and it does look a little bit untidy, but over time, once they get removed and the new growth comes in to replace it, that will look fine. So that was quite an easy decision, although I still ran through the other checks just to make sure there wasn't anything else up with it. And that leads nicely on to new growth. So check for any new growth, check on the stem for new leaves, new leaf buds, or possibly even the soil level to see if there are any new shoots, depending on the plant that you've got. And then that will help you to assess if the plant has got healthy plant material or it's trying to still grow, and that can be a really good sign that there is still potential, even if you did then remove any of the sad or damaged bits if it's got new growth on the way. So this one also had new leaves coming up in the middle. There's a nice new light green one there, and there were some others coming up in the centre of the other stems as well. So this one will very quickly replace those damaged ones that I spoke about a moment ago. Now this next one I think is the main reason for plants ending up on the clearance section, and it's to do with watering. More often than not, underwatering or forgetting to water, so plants look wilted, they look a little bit dry and crispy, and I've actually left these on for illustration purposes. I will remove those, but they are there for a reason. Or it could be overwatering, where maybe the soil has been soaked and then the plant's been left in water for a while and then it just doesn't look its best. With that, that's a really easy one to check for. You can check the soil. Is it dry? Maybe it just needs a water. You can take it home, give it a water, and the plant will perk up. Is it completely soaked through? Then again, you might be able to take it home, let it dry out, or possibly even pot it up with new soil, and then just give it the right watering schedule going forwards. And then one of the things that you can do to check whether or not they can possibly come back from that under or over watering is to check the roots, which goes on to our next check. Now roots are of course an integral part of the plant that need to be healthy to produce a healthy plant. So we want to check this as well, whether or not we're checking from a potential care issue with the watering that we mentioned earlier, or just checking to see whether or not it's pot bound or not. So with the watering example, what I'm looking for is, are the roots dried out? If it's maybe been underwatered, are there any dead roots? Or if it's been overwatered, are the roots black or yellow or mushy? Have they gone rotten as a result of being overwatered and sitting in wet soil? So as you can see with this example, these ones, this Aglaonema, has really nice fresh white roots that look really healthy to me. And then you can also check to see if it's pot bound or not. Maybe it's run out of room in the pot, so it's struggling to produce new growth. The existing growth is looking a bit sad, because that could also mean that it's also been there a while and it's used up all the nutrients in the soil, and we don't know whether or not it's being fertilised or not when it's in the shop, wherever it is. So this looks generally okay. You can start to see that there are some roots forming around the edge of the pot, but there is still a lot of free soil, and if I tip it up slightly, you can see there's still plenty of room there where the roots haven't gone. So I might still be proactive and pot this up, because it does look like it needs a little bit of extra space, but it's not fully pot bound in my opinion. Sometimes you can take plants out of the pot that have been there a while and the entire side of the soil is just taken up with roots, and even the bottom, and they can be really difficult to untangle as well because they're all twisted in on each other. Another way that you can check this, if you can't get it out of the pot or don't want to take it out of the pot in the shop, maybe if it's got loose soil, then you can also look at the bottom of the pot for the drainage holes, and you should be able to see if any roots are coming out of the bottom of the pot. That's usually a sign that it's pot bound. And that leads nicely onto the soil, and some of those points that I mentioned with the roots carry over here. So if you've got a plant that's been in the shop for a while, it might just be in the same old soil that it came in from the commercial grower, and then that has eventually been spent of all its nutrients, so the plant isn't getting the nutrients that it needs, and therefore it looks sad and it's been reduced. So especially if it's not getting fertilised either, depending on what shop you're buying it from. Another check that you can also look for is, you might have noticed this with some of your own plants if they've been in the same pot for a while, the soil gradually compacts over time and it starts to come away from the edge of the pot, so you can check to see if there's a gap or is it coming away from the edge of the pot. Also, maybe using your finger, just check how dense the soil is too. Is the soil really compacted around the plant or is it loose? Then that might be a really good sign that it does need repotting, so you can take it home if you decide to buy it, repot it in some fresh soil which has more nutrients for the plant to hopefully revive it over time. And I've brought this plant back with the crispy bits as this is a really good one for this section. This is all about the environment or location that it's been held in the store. So this could give you a really good indication of what might be wrong with the plant or what's caused the problems. So if you've got a lighting problem, perhaps if the plant's been on a shelf with shelves above it, or maybe it's been really far in the store and it's been away from any natural light sources, it's not got enough light, so it's started to get a bit leggy, the leaves have started to lose their colour, it just looks a bit sad. It could be a lighting issue, which could be quickly resolved if you take it home and put it in the right spot with the right lighting needs. Equally, where it is in relation to aircon, heat sources, doors, drafts, is that causing any impact on the plant as well? So hence the crispy bits, depending on where it is, or maybe not to that extent, but crispy bits around the edge of the leaves, for example, depending on the plant type that it is. Those things are generally easy to fix. They might take a little bit longer to fix as you need then the new leaves to replace the older crispy leaves, for example. You could identify that's where the problems are potentially coming from if you know where it's been in the store beforehand. Now this next one is a really important check, whether it's for a reduced plant or a generally healthy plant, is to check for pests before you buy it and add it to your houseplant collection. So give the plant a thorough check, look on the leaves, under the leaves where pests generally like to hide, look on the stems, in any nooks or crannies between stems where new leaves are unfurling, where pests can hide. Check the soil, give the pot a tap to see if any fungus gnats fly out, see if there's anything crawling on or in the soil, and that's a really good way to try and eliminate pests being an issue. You can also look for, as I mentioned at the start, damage. Pest damage on the leaves generally looks like little pinpricks if they've been, feeding off the leaf and causing those little pinpricks of damage on the leaf, or even patches if they've been breeding on the leaves and then you get a little patch of where they've been and it looks like where the leaf has been thinned out or maybe even burned or damaged in patches. Sometimes leaves will curl up. If they've caused damage to the leaf will curl up, and that's another sign that it could be pest related. You might even see some. So if it's things like mealybugs, the little cotton wool creature things, look out for that. If you've got really good eyesight, then you might see thrips, little black strips or dots on the back of the leaves. If it's spider mites, you might see netting or webbing or very, very tiny creatures crawling around. So just look out for any of those signs that it could be pest related, and then make your decision on whether or not you will buy it on that basis. Can you tackle the pests that are on it, or would you just give it a miss? Personally, I generally don't like to buy any plants that have signs of pests, as I think they're just more effort than they're worth, especially if they do spread to other houseplants in the collection, so I would usually give that a miss. However, if you do decide to give it a go, another good rule of thumb, whether or not you're buying a healthy plant or a reduced plant, is keep the plant quarantined for a little while, just away from the rest of your houseplant collection for a couple of weeks, until you're happy that the plant doesn't have any signs of pests before you put it next to any others. So again, you can just avoid the spread of any pests if you haven't maybe noticed them in the shop before you bought it. Another thing to look at is the foliage, and this can be a great indicator as to what the problem is, especially when you look at it alongside the other checks that you'll do. It'll hopefully help you own in on that issue and how you can fix it. So just to name a handful of things that you might notice on the leaves: crisping or browning, dry around the edges or the tips, that's usually to do with low water levels or low humidity levels. If it's brown or yellow and still soft, then it could be to do with overwatering. If it's blotchy, dry blotches that are brown or yellow, then that could be to do with something in the soil, maybe fertiliser burn, too much fertiliser. If it's got lots of spots on it, brown spots in different sizes, dotted maybe on 1 or 2 leaves, or it could be spread across different leaves, it could be leaf spot disease, depending on the plant that you've got as well. So they're just a few. There are probably many others, unfortunately, other things that the leaves might be telling you. But hopefully, like I said, alongside the other checks, it should help you be more certain about what the actual problem is. And this next one will hopefully help you get plants at bargain prices that even look completely dead. And it's all about knowing the types of plants that you're buying. So some plants are seasonal, so have a seasonal life cycle, and then they will die back every winter. And that's usually the time that they will be reduced in price because they start to look a bit straggly or even completely dead down to the soil. But the important part of these plants is actually in the soil. It's the corms, bulbs, rhizomes, whatever they're growing from, that remain healthy and stay with the right care overwintered and then come back every spring. I've covered this quite a lot in recent videos as it's now spring. It's the perfect time for these to be growing again, and I'll link a video at the end if you want to watch that and learn more about this process a little bit more. I'll link that at the end for you. So this is one example of those plants. This is an Oxalis triangularis and it grows from corms and it dies back every winter. So great timing to buy them where you can get them at a great reduced price. So if you know that this is the type of plant that you're getting at that type of year, even if it looks worse for wear, it's just the natural life cycle of the plant, and in a few months it will come back and look like this. This also happens with things like caladiums, some alocasias and colocaceas as well, depending on the care that they're getting. So just bear that in mind whenever you're buying a plant. If it looks completely dead, think about the time of year that it is, and if you're not sure, most of us have smartphones now, so give it a quick Google, check the type of plant, is it a seasonal grower, and then that will hopefully help you identify some extra plant bargains for your houseplant collection. And then there are what I would call single life plants. I'm sure there is a biological or botanical term for it, but I'm not sure what it is. But single life plants that have a set life cycle, and the plant always then dies once that life cycle is complete. But as part of that life cycle, it produces offsets. So it's constantly replacing itself with a new plant at the end of the life cycle. So this usually happens with bromeliad plants. This is an Achemea, it's part of the bromeliad family. Even Tillandsia air plants do this as well. The plant will grow, it will flower. With the Achemea it has those wonderful bright pink flowers, the star-shaped flowers, and then once that flower starts to die, as with any bromeliad, once the flower starts to die, that's it, that's the end of the life cycle, and the plant will eventually die. The leaves can stay around for quite a while longer and stay lush and green, so you can keep it as a houseplant, as just a greenhouse plant after that. But what it should do as part of this process is produce offsets. So this one has an offset just off the side here, and you can either leave this in the pot with the mother plant until that dies off and then it'll just take its place in the pot, or you can cut it off and pot it up separately as a new plant, and then you should hopefully see that life cycle continue in the same sort of sequence year after year. And this is actually one that I got as a reduced plant previously. I got it for $3.99 down from I think $16.99 or something like that, so a significant reduction, and it still had the flower at the time, so I think it was last season, but the flower was fading, so it knew it was coming to the end of its life cycle, as did the garden centre. That's why it was reduced so significantly. But I could see that it had these offsets, and I've already done a video on this, the Achemea video. If you want to watch it, you can check it out on the channel where I cover this life cycle and propagation a little bit more for the Achemea or even bromeliads. And I've taken some off to propagate them. I've left one on for now, but I probably will take this off and pot it up separately as it's getting quite large now. If you'd like to learn more about growing plants from bulbs or corms, as well as some spring care tips, then I'll link that video at the end if you'd like to watch that next. If you've got any tips on checks that you make before buying rescue plants, then put those in the comments below, as I'd love to see them and I'm sure it'll help out other viewers too. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments too and I'll respond to everyone. And as always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.